Welcome, everyone. I'm Laura DeFranco, the CEO of Brave Healer Productions, where we have a mission to wake the world up to what's possible for healing, one brave word at a time. And here today to help me with that mission are some of the amazing authors of a new book that we have coming out. This one is called The Grief Experience: Tools for Acceptance, Resilience, and Connection. Before I introduce the authors here today to you, I want to say a huge thank you to Kelly Doherty. Kelly, your mission was so huge for this book and so heartfelt and so important. And I'm so grateful to be here with you, bringing the grief experience into the world to really redefine the process for people. I'm excited to be partnering with you to update the info that we've had over the decades and really help people with some badass ways to cope and be with grief. And so it's just a huge thank you to you from me. I'm sure the co-authors join me in that gratitude. And speaking of them, I have four amazing ones in my Zoom room today. With over 2 decades of expertise in clinical mental health and wellness, April Hanna serves as the owner of Hanna's Healing Wellness Studio, dedicated to assisting individuals in rediscovering their life's purpose. I have Gabby Miniskalko with me. She's a licensed clinical psychologist and immigrant from Poland. She is passionate about mental health and supports people in navigating their trauma. Co-founder and CEO of the Recovery Connection in Winchester, Virginia, Julie Funkhauser's commitment to support the healing journey of others is deeply rooted in her own personal experience of pain, hope, and resilience. And Misty Clarenbeek McKenna has been practicing for over 20 years and is the owner of Thriving Connections in Colorado, where she helps people get to the heart of things and get unstuck. All right, ladies, welcome. April, you're going to start the party off today. Tell us about your amazing chapter.
Sure. So my chapter is chapter 16. Title of my chapter is The Healing Power of Art, Learning How to Transform the Pain of Grief. And it is my hope that my chapter is really going to empower people to take a look at grief in a totally different way, to understand and learn that the emotion of grief actually holds a certain frequency, and that once we begin to understand that we are beings of energy and our emotions are also energy and frequencies, that we can actually choose to shift them and to work with them. And I was able to learn how to do this through an art technique that I share in my chapter as well.
This fascinates me. I think even just the knowledge that there's a frequency to it is a game changer. Will you tell the listeners a little bit more about why knowing it's a frequency is a game changer?
Well, because I feel like it puts you in the seat of empowerment. The game changer is when you're able to really observe your emotions and understand that they are this frequency, that you also get to choose other emotions that maybe you would like to put in to replace. So I feel like it puts the person who is grieving in more of a seat of empowerment, and that when you are bereaved and grieving, that this isn't kind of like this life sentence that you are doomed, and that this grief is just going to have this hold over you. So I feel the game changer really is helping people to recognize that they can also choose to move the different types of frequencies of emotions throughout their kind of grieving process, and that they don't have to stay in the slower moving frequency of grief.
April, how do you play between this dance between we have to honor and fully feel everything first, and you've got a choice. So if you're feeling this bad way, you can switch it to this good way, which I fully feel is like the ultimate empowerment, taking responsibility for everything, right? Awareness is everything. With awareness, we get that choice. But I'm in this world of healers, it's always like, no, 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 don't let people shove it down, but you're not talking about that. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, maybe a good example would be one of the things that Kelly Doherty talks a lot about, which is continuing bonds, right? As we're moving through our grieving process, we eventually kind of want to get to a place where we are feeling really connected with our loved one. We are engaging in things or maybe old things that our loved one who has transitioned had done, like baking certain cakes or continuing certain traditions. And when we're in those traditions and really honoring that person and in a relationship with that continuing bond, we tend to feel more connected. We are probably finding a little more peace in the memories that we're having of those people. And that peaceful feeling, emotion, actually carries a higher frequency that moves quicker within the body than if we are kind of slipping back into that deeper state of grief. So I do think that it's a challenge to balance and to go in and out of all of the different emotions when we're grieving. And the art technique, I believe, allows you to give the grief a place. You know, you can kind of learn how to move it out of your body and put it onto a canvas and kind of, you know, I guess just give it more motion, more motion to move it out of the physical body and allow your body to hold higher frequencies that aren't as dense and slow moving like the feeling of grief.
I love all of that, April, so much. Thank you for being here today. You gave me a flashback of grandma's strawberry shortcake, so thank you for that one too.
You're welcome.
So you had me at cake. I was good. Gabby, you're up next. Tell us about your amazing chapter.
Sure. So I wrote chapter 5 called Uprooted, My Story of Immigration Loss. And it's me sharing my experience of being an immigrant. I moved to the US, the Chicagoland area, as a child. I moved here permanently when I was around 8. And the chapter is just my opportunity to really talk about my need to belong in order to kind of survive in this new society. I was so different from everyone around me that, I really needed to abandon certain parts of myself in order to fit in. And now I'm at this point in my life where I'm looking back and I'm like, okay, I fit in, I belong, I have community, but where am I? Where is my authenticity? So it's me reflecting on my culture as a Polish person, but also my experience of acculturating into the American culture and the ups and downs and the grief that I experienced throughout it all and still do.
I appreciate the powerful chapter that you wrote about a different kind of loss. And you're making me think of loss of identity, but almost like a forced loss of identity so that you could fit in. What do you want to tell other listeners about that? What's important to you that they know about that?
That you're not alone. I think oftentimes when people move to the U.S. from other countries, there is this pressure to abandon our roots, and those messages are all around us that you have to be American, you have to belong, you have to fit in, you have to give up parts of yourself. So my message is to find yourself again, reconnect with your culture, reconnect with your identity, and find beauty in it, embrace it.
I feel like, America should be one of the places where it doesn't matter. You can still be whoever you are when you're here. But man, sometimes that is not the case, is it? Takes some courage.
Yeah, and I talk about that a little bit in the chapter. My family came here on a diversity visa. We actually won a lottery that we didn't apply for. And it's kind of ironic that it was called the diversity visa to kind of create America that's like a melting pot that celebrates all these different unique characteristics of different cultures. But then when people get here, um, they're really kind of bullied out of their cultural uniqueness, and there is this pressure to conform, and it's really suffocating. And there's not really a way to kind of balance both in a way that feels safe.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that you're talking about this in such a powerful way. Thank you for doing that. Thanks for being here today, Gabby. Julie, you're up next. Tell us about your amazing chapter.
Thank you, Laura. So my chapter, it's chapter 2. The title of it is Unlocking New Depths of the Heart, How to Transform Loss. It's my journey of, my experience that still continues every day. That's a huge element of my story, is that, grief isn't like the healing journey isn't this finish line, it's like at the top of the mountain. If you get there, it's like, oh, we have arrived and everything is over. You know what I mean? Um, it's my chapter is much about, how the loss of my late husband, Danny, through overdose catapulted me into a complete spiritual transformation, and really embracing the experience of softening, allowing myself to release, right? The power of release in the grief process, what that can do, what that can do for us by softening us into humanity, essentially is like, just my journey of realizing the more I release, the wider my heart can open up to experience more depths of love, and really focusing on the importance of, actively allowing myself to release over and over, for forever, really.
It is a forever game, and
Yeah.
and it's wonderful to hear you all talk about this topic. And I'm listening to Julie, thinking, "Wow, she's making that sound easy," and we all know how hard it is, right? But this is you sign up for a lifetime's worth of whatever I want to call it, healing, transformation, whatever the moment is. But I kind of want to get back to that thing you said about the mountain, because it's been talked about in every single interview so far with all of your co-authors, the timing of grief, basically, that there is none.
Mhm.
And I want to throw this one at you, Julie. Like, so yes, that is true. And when you come upon a friend or a family member 2 decades later and you can see their life is still stuck somewhere because of the loss, then how do you guide the people that you're helping in that, in terms of like, well, there is no timing, and how do you want to
Mhm.
fill that in?
That's powerful, right? I think I'm a person in long-term recovery, right? Have an addiction treatment center, and I compare often the grief journey to the journey of recovery from addiction, kind of in a parallel. There is no one size fits all. There is no one path. There is no, timeline. The power that I have felt, and it's been touched on already, this morning, is a sense of belonging and connection. A lot of the times, the most beautiful thing we can offer is just our presence, and just allowing ourselves to be available and to show love. And sometimes that really means saying nothing. Because I know for me in my grief journey, there was nothing that anybody could say. Or, on a Monday, somebody could say X and it landed. And then on a Tuesday, somebody could say the same thing and I'm angry. And so there really is, for me, I've over the years supporting other people on their grief journey, just presence, letting them know that they're not alone and they're loved. I have learned to try to pause a little bit more, and really being fully present in their process instead of, me saying this is mine and thinking that that's how it should be for everybody.
Yeah, brilliant, because it really is the power of the present moment, no matter what we're talking about, the person or their friend. The power is in the moment. Um, and I had mentioned this one time before, but you're making me think of a room that I was in. It was a healing seminar, and the instructor was up on the stage, and there were probably about 200 of us in the audience sitting in chairs that the chairs were touching. We were that close to our friends next to us, and somebody started to cry in response to what was going on, and their friend immediately did the back patting and shoved a tissue box in her face, and the instructor on the stage shut it down. Like, so not only not saying anything, but not trying to alleviate your own discomfort for somebody else's emotions by shoving the tissue in their face, right? Like, just holding a space for people to have whatever they need to have. So thank you for making me remember that again, because I think it's so important, and I have to take responsibility for my own reactions
Mhm.
when others are in grief too.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Misty, tell us about your chapter.
I wrote chapter 24. It's called Death Out of Order, Recognizing and Embracing the Both And. I was sick a couple of weeks ago, so I have a little bit of a frog in my voice, so bear with me. It's my story of losing my best friend in the Oklahoma City bombing. And then decades later, having two losses in our family of nephews who were children. And, um, you know, Julie was just talking about the mountain and not um, getting to a place where it's just over. Um, and I found myself, when these two subsequent losses happened, I found this intensity of the grief from my friend decades earlier. And then these three out of order losses that just felt really mixed together. And it was hard for me to distinguish sometimes what grief that was. And one of the things that I really had to learn in losing my friend was being able to look at both sides, the grief part, as well as to be able to see the beautiful things in life. One of the things about my story is that I had been dating my now husband for a week and a half before the bombing happened. And so being able to hold on to both of those things, that something really wonderful was happening for me at the same time that I was experiencing this huge grief and loss.
And I love that you're talking about this, because that is possible. So you're an example of being able to hold both at the same. Gosh, isn't life like that too? Okay, you're reminding me of somebody else mentioning the term delayed grief. It's complicated, isn't it? Misty,
Mm-hmm.
what do you want to share with people about even what that means and what to expect, or how they can know or do anything when they're feeling it?
Yeah, I think you were talking about awareness earlier, and I think that is such a key piece to, I think one of the things that I feel about grief is that it can be so lonely, even as we are with other people who are also grieving the same person. We all have our own unique relationships with those people, and so we grieve differently, and so you can feel so alone. And if you don't have some awareness about, oh, what is this that's happening to me, or what's going on, I think that makes it really challenging. So being able to recognize what is happening for you. For me, I learned the term cumulative grief, and that really clicked for me to be able to make sense of, like, oh, this is why I'm feeling this intensity that I haven't felt in so long for my friend. And now all of this feels so mixed together. And So I think that awareness piece is really important. And then I really just had to be able to tune in to my own emotions to be able to listen to what they were telling me.
I like having that other term as well, cumulative. And I think if people can wrap their minds around like some of these things that could be happening, they'll have a way to. Sometimes we need a way to explain the sensations we're having. They don't seem right. Like why all of a sudden, you know? But when we get to have these conversations like we're having today, it's like, oh, okay. And I don't know. There's an ease in my heart when I get to do that. Misty, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
So, Gabby, I'm going to start this next question with you. You know, all of the book titles that we're publishing around here take a holistic approach. And when we're talking about the grief experience and the process of grief, I believe holistic is very important. I would assume all of you would agree, but tell me a little bit more about why, like help our listeners understand why a approach is really going to be the best kind of approach to what they're going through.
Yeah. Um, the way I look at the word holistic is a little bit of everything, and that's kind of how I conceptualize it. So it's not really enough to heal in one way. We have to experiment with different coping methods, so to speak. We have to utilize our bodies. We have to potentially intellectualize certain things and lean on education. We also have to connect with others. We have to enlist art and creativity. We are complicated. We're complex beings, and I think we really need to empower ourselves to look at healing, um you know finding healing in anything that exists.
Yes, I'm just like doing this. I love listening to you all talk about these topics. You're so amazing. You're all such expert master teachers in these topics. And that was a fantastic way to kick this off. Gabby, thank you. Julie, what do you want to add? Like when you want to share about a holistic approach, how do you want people to understand that?
Sure. Well, Gabby did a great job. I was like, oh, yes. And my got chills and all the things. Um, uh, when I experienced, it made me think about my journey. It truly catapulted me into all of the energy work that I do. My late husband's death and the experience that I had in the grief, the raw pain, experiencing how in every single way possible it impacted me, mind, body, spirit, relationships, work, like it just like wildfire hit everything. um and I began to have these profound experiences, um incredibly beautifully powerful and spiritual experiences, and realizing like the healing journey, the grief journey hits every element of us and around us, and so the healing journey must align in that way. And if it weren't for, I can't say for sure, had things not unfolded as they did, would I be a Reiki practitioner, and would I practice yoga, breath work, meditation, and do all of these things? And I experienced what I did, and am so grateful for uh, leaning into the process. Not all the time, right? Because that's part of the journey too, is to close and reopen, and close and reopen, and give ourselves grace in that way. But I just thought about the profound impact of grief, how it gets into every single crevice of everything, and so the healing journey must align in that way too.
I really appreciate the way that you're talking about it as well. I especially just appreciated you helped give everyone permission to close and open and close and meaning, yeah, that's normal and it's okay. And you don't have to like get down on yourself for being enclosed again, and the things we tell ourselves about it.
Yep.
Brilliant. Misty, what do you want to add to this holistic discussion?
Gosh, I'm feeling like Gabby and Julie said it so well. I think that I think Julie was just saying it so nicely about how grief does get into everything. How could it not? And so it is such a kind of existential experience that makes us re-examine so many things, and shifts so many things in our lives. So I think that being able to come at it from a healing place. I'm so sorry. um, so that you aren't missing anything. Because I think that was the thing that I really struggled with when I lost my friend, is that you hear so many platitudes and there are so many things that people want to say to try to make you feel better. And I really tried to do that. I really tried to grab onto some of those things and be okay. And it made me worse. And so I think that you have to come at it from a holistic way. Otherwise, you are missing places, and that actually causes harm, I think.
Yeah, that's really a really good additional idea about it. You made me think also, and both of you now, Julie and how Misty continued it. That could be the one biggest gift of grief, is that it infuses into all of us, because that right there is the transformation, right? And so just leaving it open to what's possible, and that's my way of putting my curiosity into the mix. April, I know it's hard to go last on this one. What do you want to add to this? And really from a personal aspect, how is that for you when you think of that holistic journey?
Well, I think with, some of my experiences, and Julie might have had some similar experiences with doing some healing work, is that I truly believe that we're more than our physical body. And the one guarantee that everybody knows, but a lot of us don't like to talk about, is that we are all going to die. Life and death are equally connected here on this planet on Earth. We can't escape it. And I think the holistic part of this is also really talking a lot about the soul. I mean, a lot of the questions still are not answered, like who are we? Where do we come from? Where do we go? And when people pass, so many people, and I'm sure everybody listening and anyone that has ever seen a dead body will say, that's not my person. There is an element of the soul that really leaves the physical body. And I think, that's a major part of the holistic discussion that I think really also needs to be had, and really come in a little bit heavier in these conversations, because I think that is what a lot of people do yearn for when their loved one has made their transition, is where are they? How can I communicate with them? A lot of people will look for signs, and you just long for that because you don't have those physical touches. You can't hear their physical voice. So I think the discussion about us as being consciousness is a huge topic that, I know where sometimes we could be focused on the body and our emotions and processing it and leaning into it. But I think when we start to bring in the conversation of the soul, that also lends to probably more questions, but also a little more comfort to realize that we really are energy beings and we're much more than the physical body.
Yes, thank you for bringing that in. If any of you have read our book called Sacred Death, you'll know that what April just talked about is, oh my gosh, that's maybe the second best gift of this is like understanding that there's so much maybe that you don't understand yet. Like, what if you learn something today about grief that changes everything, right? For you. And I love those conversations, April. Thank you for that. So, Julie, I'm going to start with you on this one. you know, everyone talks a lot about self-care, but when I get into this topic in terms of if you are in the middle of a grief process, it not only feels completely necessary, but it also feels like survival. Like if you don't take care of yourself, right? I'm not even going to fill in the blank of that. But what I want to know from you guys is what's one of your favorite ways to take care of yourself? And I know you probably all have like 100, so you have to pick one for today, okay? Like, what's that one go to? And then, second part to this question is, it's great to know what to do, but it's quite another thing to set the boundary that you're going to prioritize this for yourself in the middle of your grief process over everyone else, your kids, your loved ones, right? Because if you don't, then how are you ever going to take care of anyone else that is around you? So you can tell I'm excited about this question, right, Julie? How would you answer it?
Shoo! Well, I need to be mindful of the time because I just need to make sure I'm not talking too much on this. I talk about this in my chapter actually about how I almost didn't even mean to, but I stumbled into or fell into my elliptical, kind of going back to when my late husband passed. I had this experience. I was so exhausted all the time and had so much energy. I thought I was going to jump out of my skin. We were talking about duality earlier. It was like experiencing two things in the same moment and in the same space. And the early months of grief was all duality. I mean, it was just starving and couldn't eat. It was just like all of these different kinds of things. Um, and I would every night I'd put the kids to bed. They were 18 months and 4 years old at the time. And I would just get on my elliptical. I'd be exhausted, but I would crank music and I would just go. I would just go until I couldn't go anymore. And every single time that physical movement allowed, talking about how everything's connected, began to kick up the emotion, and I would I would scream, I would, cry. I would just, I'd be in the basement, so I wouldn't wake the kids up, but I would just get everything out to the point where I would get off the elliptical and I would just take this huge exhale. And in that exhale is what I learned to continue seeking and expanding those moments in alignment with, all that is beyond us, beyond our human bodies, spiritual energy, is in that exhale and in that healing of when it's just like, it's out. And now, thank you for bringing that up, Laura. Life is so beautiful. Life is so busy. And I am not an expert at boundaries. I'll be honest. I've learned to. I recently had one of my best friends recently passed from breast cancer. At 36, and that has compounded, my grief journey very much so. And it's sneaky. Grief can be sneaky too. And just kind of when I find myself anxious, irritable, I've learned to check in and ask myself, Julie, when was the last time you set aside time to cry about Alex or cry about, Danny, or cry, like really kind of connect the two. And a lot of the times I'd say, in the last several months, it's been like, you're due, you know. So I think setting aside time for me, honoring that time, even if it's just a few minutes, and acknowledging this is the time for me to release grief, and calling it and naming it has been profound.
Yeah, you're gifting us right now with explaining your awareness process, and all of you have done that today so beautifully. You're just giving people such a gift by being so personal about your process, because it's like, oh yeah, I could just ask myself that question. When was the last time, right? Okay. And then, right. And so I love that you all are doing that. Okay. Misty, how about you on this self care question? Like, what's one of your go tos? And then if you want to make a comment on that, boundaries and prioritizing your own healing.
I'm like Julie, like movement, I think is a big one, but thinking about something different. Um, and also like that both and piece. I being with people and being able to have people that I can kind of process with, and those people who can just sit with you when you need to just have someone sit and maybe just cry with, but also having some time alone to journal or just do some of my own processing. Um, and like Julie said, I think it can be difficult. We all get busy. And the one that I think that can be more challenging is to have the time alone, to really have space. And, I think that for me, it's really about sort of being able to tune in internally and think about, like, again, that feeling of like, what's happening inside for me? Where am I feeling that in my body? And what is it telling me, to remind myself that I need to create that space?
Yes, so, so important. Everything, all of these tools. And honestly, I know all of you could list off 100. There's so many ways, but I'm definitely, I'm a journaling fan, so I would have talked about the journaling as well. April, how about you? What do you want to add? What's your go-to self-care, and what about those boundaries for you?
Yeah, so when I was taking the class that I wrote about in my chapter and learning about the map of consciousness by David Hawkins, I learned about the frequency of joy. And my teacher asked the whole class, what do you do for joy every single day? Kind of like your joy routine. And I kind of looked at him like, every day? What are you talking about? Like, okay, so I go on vacation a couple times a year. I see live music in the summertime, which is really my go-to. Music is my go-to. But when he challenged me and said, no, but what do you do every single day? To hold that frequency of joy, because joy happens to be one of the highest frequencies that we can hold within our body, that really challenged me to create better boundaries with myself and others, and actually take time for that joy to be part of my daily life. And it was a challenge, to think about, to literally take time out of work and owning 3 businesses and, always having something to do to prioritize the joy, and prioritizing my joy practices every single day. That's a boundary. It's a boundary that we have to make, for ourselves. So mine would either consist of taking photos, because I love photography, getting down into my art room and playing some art, or it was literally taking maybe 5 or 10, 15 minutes to listen to some of my favorite artists and albums, but really setting that time aside, just like people normally do for exercise. Some people mention here that, movement is for them too. And on those days, sometimes there would be movement, or there would be walks and meditating. But I think it's a challenge, and I'd like to challenge anyone that is listening. Do you have a daily joy practice? And do you do something that brings you into that frequency every single day? And so I think it's something that is a challenge to continue to do, but a nice way to be able to take really good care of yourself when you're going through the grieving process and holding, that lower frequency in the body.
Yeah, game-changing question. I love it. I wrote that one down. Can you hold the frequency of joy every day? Can I? I think so. Gabby, how about you? Tell us about your go-to for self-care.
Um, so first I kind of wanted to talk about this concept of not just focusing on the things that we didn't get to do, because I think sometimes that's our default, right? We have this list of self-care activities that we want to do. I want to go to yoga, I want to eat well, I want to journal. And then when our grief takes over and we're not able to do those things, we shame ourselves, you know. Here's all these things I couldn't do, I suck, or whatever the narrative is. So when talking about self-care, I think we have to meet ourselves where we're at, and you know, really give ourselves credit for it was that we were able to do. Taking notice of the little things, right? I showered today, I got out of bed, I went outside. So while I think self-care can be some of these big grand things, I think it's also just the act of um, making that little mental list of what were the small ways that I took care of myself today, and um, being present with those little things.
Yes. Oh my gosh. You're making me think of even just, I said no to that thing. I
Yes.
was able to say no, right? Yeah, this can be very, very little. And thanks for bringing up
Yeah.
the self-talk too. I think positive self or more positive self-talk is self-care. That alone, just switching up the way that you're loving yourself
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
talk.
And avoiding words like I was lazy today, or oh, I'm so stubborn that I can't do more self-care, right? You weren't lazy. You were tired. You needed rest. So going back to that self-compassion piece.
Yes. All day long for lots of reasons. I think it's good to do that. Just a quick thank you to all of you before we move into this last question of the day. But thanks for not just for saying yes to this project, for really taking the challenge that I gave you to put your beautiful, vulnerable stories in this book, and also stepping up as the master teachers you are to provide a tool, a strategy, you know. So, you guys, this is the stories are healing, and the master tools you're going to learn in this book are wow. Like having a toolkit like this is a very, very powerful thing. And it's so much more than a book. You are all so generous in the ways that you help people, and our readers can reach out to you. There's going to be lots of information for you in the book. For this last one, I know that this is going to be tough because we could talk for 3 more hours about this, but Misty, I'm going to challenge you to give it to me in a sentence ish. What's the most important thing you want to leave our listeners with today in terms of the grief process? What do you want them to know?
I think the thing that I would say is that they're not alone. Um, I think that was part of what led me to do this. That's how I came to this project, is that I would post lots of things about grief. And one of the other authors reached out to me and said, I see all these things that you post. Would you be interested in this? And I had so many people who would reach out and say, I read that thing you posted and it really made a difference for me.
Yes, perfect. That message has come up in every single way, in every single interview, in every single everything. You guys are not, no one is alone. You don't have to be alone in this. April, what's your version? What's that one most important thing you want people to know about this process?
Well, I think it'll be something that somebody had said to me when I was kind of feeling really down and out through the grief process, and that to not focus so much on the details of it, but the way in which you move through it.
Mm,
You know, it's about that grace and how you can move through it, and that is more of the most important thing.
I love that one. Thank you. That's a game changer right there. Gabby, how about you? What do you want to tell us about this for you?
Uh, Maybe a little bit of a cliche, but that's okay, right? We love a good cliche here and there. So I think I would say there is no right or wrong way to grieve. There is no guideline, there is no outline. Um, really do what you're being pulled to do. And sometimes that's maybe not having a lot of emotions. Maybe that's having a ton of emotions, and meeting yourself where you're at, not judging yourself, not comparing yourselves, just kind of allowing yourself to be how you are in the grief process.
Yeah, really important. It's a really important, if it's a cliche, it's an important one. I like it. And Julie, you're going to wrap us up today. What do you want everyone to know about this?
I would say the life journey, right? Just life in and of itself is full of nothing but opportunity. Full of opportunity. And although the grief journey is incredibly powerfully painful, it can also be incredibly and powerfully beautiful in that it can, and I'm going to be cheesy for a second, to my title, it can literally unlock, and we can discover new depths of our connection to self, our higher power, others, and the human experience in general, to levels that we had never known before. And so therein lies that opportunity in the grief journey.
Yes, what else is possible? Oh my gosh. Julie, Gabby, April, Misty, thank you so much for what you do in the world. And thank you for being here today to share it. Thanks, ladies. So, you guys, I know you heard something that made you curious, or you just want to continue the conversation. Maybe you have a question, need support. Drop down into the show notes. I have everybody here hooked up with their links. And again, this is way more than a book. This is a generous community of experts who are waiting for you to reach out. Sometimes that can be the hardest thing to do, but when you do it, it will change your life. And these amazing, beautiful, badass women are ready to help you out. You're also invited to join our book launch party, which is going to be on February 9th, 10 a.m. I'm going to gather with all of the authors of the grief experience, and we'll be dropping some more wisdom and inspiration for you. I've got some information down below about that. And if you're listening after that date, that just means the book is ready. So you can hop over to Amazon and grab your copy at that point. And if you're a wellness professional, you're ready to share your story in one of our expert collaborations, reach out for a chat. Lastly, today, everyone, remember your words change the world when you're brave enough to share them. So it is time to be brave. See you next time, everyone.